The thing that often breaks most small business owners is not their ability to get more clients, but their ability to hire and to scale beyond themselves. Because very quickly you will run into the problem of not having any more time. You are doing everything in your business, your schedule is packed, and you are starting to get burnt out. Now, until you fix this cycle, you are going to be in this perpetual loop, and you essentially have a glorified job. Now, I can say that because I was in the exact same position until I figured out this system. So I want to give you as many tips and advice and lessons that I have learned from myself, as well as working with clients. So the first thing you need to do when it comes to hiring right now is you need to position yourself to scale and to hire. Most people, they just say, oh, I need to hire somebody because I don't have any more time, but they're not in the position financially to actually hire someone. Whenever you hire someone, you're not going to make profit off them first day. Maybe depending on your business, you were lucky enough to, but it's going to take time to train that employee to get them up to par where they could be, where they're going to be as profitable as possible. So number one, I would have enough cash on hand to service that client for maybe the first couple of months, even if they don't account for any extra revenue. Now, this just buys you time. It buys you a safety net for things to not go as planned, and to just take pressure off yourself. The last thing you want to do is to hire somebody to make less money, have to fire that person, be back in the same exact position you were before, but in a worse financial position. So you want to make sure that you position yourself so when you do hire someone, you hire someone for the long term, not just for a couple months, things go bad, and also you're not able to hire the right person. So first off, position your business to be ready to hire somebody for the long term. That'll look a little bit different depending on what your business is. Number two, which is one of the biggest mistakes, and I honestly kind of made this in the beginning myself, was know exactly what you're going to do when they start to replace some of the things that you do. So say you're a landscaper, for example, and you're out in the field. You hire somebody to replace you in that. What are you going to be doing exactly with that saved time to continue to keep driving the business forward? Because the last thing you want to do, again, which in some instances may be good, but say you're working 40 hours a week, you're making 10, 20, 50K a month profit. You hire somebody, now that just cuts your profit in half or drops that profit by 10K, and you're just sitting there doing nothing on your hands. Now that may be good for a little while, but if you want to keep scaling, growing the business, you need to know what you're going to do and what you're replacing your time with to continue to scale. Maybe that's more marketing. Maybe that's more, cold calls. Maybe that's more building SOPs, getting client testimonials, whatever that may be. Just know exactly what you're going to do when you are replacing yourself in the field. Now, the third thing, one of the most important things, is have SOPs ready. You need to reverse engineer what made you good at your craft and be able to teach it to somebody else. Most people just rely on, I'll just teach them whatever I think I know. But oftentimes, most people don't even realize why they are good at what they do. They've been doing it for so long. You've been landscaper, physical therapist, trainer, whatever it may be. You've been doing it for so long that almost everything you do is second nature. So you need to reverse engineer what makes you good, almost to the point of it being robotic. Like if I was to feed this exact system, this exact training sheet into a robot, it could do it exactly to the level that I do it because I gave it so much information. So this is going to be an iteration process where you're like, okay, this is how I do this. And then the next time you go to actually do that service, just follow that list. Figure out what you're missing. Oh, every time a client comes in, I always say, oh, how are you doing? I ask them, 5 different personal questions. I'm going to make sure I put that on the list because that is something I do every single time, but it's not there. And then maybe during the session, there's some, little things that you do that aren't on that list. You want to make sure that you're going back and forth from actually servicing clients to your SOPs and making sure they line up as best as possible, not only to train your employees, but when they run into a problem, they can revert back to that list as opposed to always calling you or maybe just completely missing it and then again watering down your service. So you want to make sure that there's no real drop off between execution in the skill and of the service between you and that next person. One of the best ways to do that is to have SOPs ready to go. So you need to know what makes you good, what makes your business different, so that way they can use that and reference that to make sure they're doing it to the absolute best ability possible every single time. So next big lesson is building a feeder program. So this has been huge for me in what I do. Is all of my employees have essentially came through internships. So having a system to bring on younger talent, people that are very interested into the field. Now that could be internships for you, that could be apprenticeships, whatever it may be, but start to build out that feeder program and start to create a system where people want to come in, even if you don't hire them, but you're attracting talent to your business. You are training them, you are getting some sort of work out of it. You're starting to get some, maybe lower level stuff, but you're starting to be able to scout talent. It's the same thing that obviously big businesses do, but if you can find a way to do that in your local market, maybe that's, you're a physical therapist. Okay, you get internships out of high school, you get internships out of college, and that's your feeder program. So you're not having to go out and search for talent. That talent is coming to you and people who are already interested in what they want to do. So that'll not only save you a ton of time on having to go out or hire, recruiters and all of this stuff, is bringing those people to you as opposed to you having to go to them. So for me, this has been huge in terms of the internship, but there's obviously a lot of different ways that you can go about that. Now, the next thing when it comes to finding people is be somebody that people want to work with. Now, this has been another huge piece for me just with social media, and social media is a very underrated way to get talent. Everyone looks at it in terms of, oh, how can I get clients? How can I get clients? I want to, run these ads on social media. But social media is also a great way to attract talent. If people are seeing that you are doing big things, if people are seeing that you're scaling, you have values, you're building in a direction and in a way that people respect, that is going to attract like-minded people who want to be on that path, who might not be as entrepreneurial, but they want to work in a company that values the things that you value. They want to work in the environment that you create as a business owner, that you represent on social media. So social media is also a feeder program into your hiring process. And you should also look at social media like that. Look, what are you putting out there? How are you representing your company? Are you representing your company in a way that people are going to want to come work for you? And are you the entrepreneur? And are you the person that people want to work for? All of the interns and people that I have gotten have been people that have wanted to learn under me and have respected the things that I've been able to build, and then they wanted to be a part of it. The same way that you attract clients, you also attract people that could potentially work for you. So that is also something to very well think of. Now, the next big piece to understand is incentives are going to be everything. So the comp plan and how you lay that out is going to be everything for attracting and for keeping the talent that you do have. But the other thing about that is not everyone is motivated by money. Now, there's a question that I like to ask a lot of the interns and people that I have that I'm looking at hiring is, are you more motivated by craft, being the absolute best at what you do? Are you more motivated by money? Or are you more motivated by stability, being able to, live your life, work-life balance? Which one are you more motivated by? Now, depending on your business and depending on your hire, one may be better than the other one. If you're looking for a salesman, you want to bring in some money, someone's motivated by money. Okay, I want to make sure my incentives line up so that way they're rewarded based on that and based on what they want. Now, the next one might be motivated by craft. They want to be the absolute best that they can be. You want to make sure you have the resources and show them, hey, I have the resources and the ability to make you the best at what you do. Now, maybe they eventually want to, scale up and have their own business. That's great. You may get a couple great years of work out of them, but then they're going to eventually move on. And that's just the natural life of business. And that is great. Even if they do become your competitor in some sense, they're most likely going to speak very highly of you, which is going to create another feeder program for more people to kind of want to work for you. And then the third piece is, are they motivated by stability? Do they want work-life balance? For some certain hires in your business, that might be great. You can pay them a wage. They have a safety net. They enjoy what they do, but you're also not going to get, crazy motivation out of them, which is completely fine. But asking that question, you can get a good idea of what motivates them and what they want out of life. Now, obviously things can change, but you want to make sure you're setting your incentives up in a way that actually mimic what they are trying to get out of life and taking their goals and their career path very seriously. Because yes, for almost everyone, money is a huge piece of it, but fulfillment and purpose and environment are a huge piece to them staying and actually continuing to work for you in the long term. And one of the ways that I like to structure my pay structure with a lot of my guys is always base plus incentive. I want my guys to get a piece of the pie. Almost eat what you kill, but they have their safety net. They get their guaranteed pay regardless, but they get to participate in the upside, not necessarily in terms of equity, but they get to participate to a certain degree of essentially eating what they kill. By us doing better, they do better, and vice versa. Now, the next huge piece that was vital for me was hiring based on values and attitude versus skill set. There was a couple times where I could have maybe had this guy, hired him for a little bit more, way more skill set, but maybe wasn't as motivated, didn't have the same attitude, I didn't really vibe with them as much, versus the guy that had the motivation, that had the attitude, and not necessarily the skill set yet. That is where your feeder program, that is where your ability to have SOPs and to train effectively comes into play, because you can always train up skill. You can't necessarily train values and attitude and things like that. And like they say, one bad apple can ruin the entire group. So I always try to go for values, for principles, for motivation levels, for attitude versus skill set, because I can train that at the end of the day. And also when it does come to values and principles and things like that, you want to make sure you have your company values in place. Okay, always showing up on time, doing X, doing Y, doing Z, and making sure that A, you live up to that, but also your employees live up to it, and you want to make sure you stay on it from the very beginning. If you're lackadaisical with one employee, or you're lackadaisical with yourself, I show up whenever I want, you can expect your employees to do the exact same thing. So you need to be willing to lead by example in terms of those values, in terms of that mindset, in terms of that motivation, because you're going to set the standard and they are simply just going to be following or mimicking your behavior. Now, lastly, like we said in the beginning, you're essentially in business just trading problem for problem, and you're just trying to move up the problem ladder. Eventually, you're going to get to a point where you have plenty of clients, you have enough employees, but you just can't hire fast enough and train fast enough. So your biggest constraint is going to be your ability to teach and to train at a certain point. Now, depending on your business model, it might be different things. It might be facility costs, might be equipment costs, but eventually, and to some degree, it's going to be your ability to train and to get high quality content. That is where the feeder program comes in. That is where the social media comes in. That is where your company values comes in. That is where your ability to train. And this is essentially the feedback loop. If you're not good in 1, 2, or 3, it doesn't matter how good you are at training, because you're not going to be getting people. And it doesn't matter how good you are at getting people if you can't train them effectively. So this is kind of the last piece of the flywheel, where if you know how to train and start to do research and start to learn about how to teach and how people learn and start to understand different personalities. Okay, this person is more of a visual learner, this person's more of a hands-on person, this person's more, you know, theory, and they just like to understand things first. By understanding people, by understanding psychology, by understanding how people learn, you can be a better teacher, you can train people faster, and you can scale faster. So these are really the biggest things that I have learned over the course of, you know, my 10 years in business and helping numerous other people. So if you are in this process and you maybe want some advice in terms of, you know, comp structure, in terms of hiring, in terms of finding people, in terms of social media, whatever it may be, feel free to drop a comment, hit us on email, schedule a call, whatever it may be. Happy to help come in and help you guys continue to scale and to grow and to reach your potential. So hope you guys like this video. See you guys in the next video soon. Peace.